Hello, this is Jason with nerdyfamily.us, here today to talk about a piece of software that I use a lot in D&D. What you're looking at here is Maptools, made by rptools.net. I've already loaded up our campaign, and this is actually right where we left off. Just figure this would be more exciting than looking at just a generic blank campaign, and I just wanted to kind of walk through some of the functionality. I'm doing this as a stage thing because I'm hoping to eventually explain my whole framework that I've added into Maptools, because Maptools is pretty basic as it comes, but you can add a lot to it, and I've done a lot. So I thought I would just kind of walk through all that stuff, and I figured I better start with the basics. So this is Maptools, and as you see, you have kind of a content area, and then it ends up working a lot like PowerPoint, if you're familiar from that, as it's drawn in layers. You have the token layer, and the token layer is where your players, when they connect to the server, that's where they interact. They only exist on the token layer. That way they're not able to move your backgrounds around or touch like a chair at a bar and drag it around. So token layer is that layer. Hidden layer is an option for the DMs if they want to be able to structure stuff or lay out bad guys or anything like that. They could have them hidden in the hidden layer. And any time you can right click and say change to something else. So if you had them all in the hidden layer, a bunch of ninjas, you can make them, appear all of a sudden. I myself don't actually use the hidden layer though. I like the visible to players better, and I'll show that after a while. The other layer, or the next one, I guess, would be object layer. That one's a really nice one because that's where you put like this big hole here. Actually, no, the hole probably would go in background, but object is like a chair at a bar or a door. Things like that you want to have represented in the game, but they don't need to necessarily move around a lot, or as a DM you might need to move them, so you can click on the object layer and drag them around. I don't think any of these are actually objects, but if I had some, I use them a lot for doors. I don't want people to actually be able to click on them, but I need them to be able to change state and move around and stuff like that. So that's what I use objects for. Background is the drawings in the background. And those are like this big hole right here. It's actually a big drawing. So that's where you put all your stuff that you never want to touch, and you want to make sure that it's on the bottom. And just like in Photoshop or any other drawing program, you do have the bring to front, send to back, that kind of stuff, so that you can position and layer things how you want them. So that's the basic drawing board. And what I'm doing here is I right click, and you can drag it around to look around. And if you left click, you can draw squares to highlight stuff. So you could highlight these three guys and have them all walk together. Up here you have your little toolbar, and I believe you don't see everything if you're a player, or maybe you do. I always forget that one. I don't think you see vision blocking, but you have drawing, and again, keep in mind where you're drawing it so that you don't draw on top of, like if I draw on the token layer, you have the possibility of actually drawing on top of the tokens. So like if I drew there, okay, that one's actually on, I guess you would draw on top of the object. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. So if you had like a bar, you could highlight over the chairs or something. I'm just going to scribble. Let's see, I need a bigger brush for that. Well, that's not much bigger. There we go. Just took it a second. So that's the drawing. If you really quickly need to sketch out, like here's a river, here's something, you can, throw it in the background layer, quickly draw out the layout. A lot of times that's what we do if we don't really know what the scenery is going to look like. We just need to throw something together really quick. Use the drawing tool. There's straight lines and squares, and you can add text. And the text we found really useful because like right here I have a marker. So like whenever we're on our map, I'll just zoom over there really quick. There we go. So here's the map we use. So see, I use these text layers or text drawings, and then when you zoom into them, they always stay the same size. So you can see the houses and stuff here. I'll go back to my desert map. Okay, so and then you have some other tools, but they're for more advanced topics. This one is for shapes. So if you say they cast a fireball, here's what, or cone of freezing or something, you can, that looks really horrible, but there it was. I did Control-Z to get rid of that. Fog is for the DMs, and that works just like any other type of game where you're exploring a map and you don't want it all to be shown at once. You can use fog because each one of these tokens actually has a vision, so each player can only see portions of the map at a time. And on this particular map I have it shut off because it's just daytime and it's all open. But I could put it to daytime or nighttime and then draw in fog of war or remove it based on like, okay, you found this room, I'll go ahead and uncover it. Here's where you're going to start out, or something like that. And then vision blocking affects how the fog gets uncovered and how the maps are shown to the players. If you draw a wall with vision blocking, like if I draw this, they will see that as a actual solid object. And then you can hold shift to undo thing, or to, so when you draw it normally, it draws that, and if you hold shift, that's like a eraser. So you can get rid of stuff that way. And you have all the different shapes and stuff. And again, advanced tutorials, but I'll start with the basics. I'm going to go ahead and walk around the outside here. There's a whole bunch of windows based on what your DM uses, or you as the DM, what you feel is important for your game. And I've seen a lot of different DMs do a lot of things differently, but this is what my window usually looks like. And as a player, you won't have to see all of this, and you won't be looking at it. Like the resource library is only for the DMs really, to be able to place in items. Like if I decide there's a boat anchor, oops, it's not dragging, there we go. If I decide there's a boat anchor there, I could drag in a boat anchor. I'm just going to delete that. But the idea is that you have all the different tokens and objects and stuff. And what I end up doing is this is okay, but I have a really hard time finding the exact thing I want using this drill down menu. So I actually keep another window of just Windows File Explorer open, and I drag from Windows File Explorer just directly here. That's a little bit quicker because then you can just search. Because if you look in you can get these item packs all over the internet, but basically like when I go to barrels, here are good barrels, here's barrels on their side, here's barrels stacked. Whereas if I just search for the word barrel, all these are named barrel, so I can see them all that way. That's a lot quicker to draw out the map and stuff. Next up is the initiative window. This one, a lot of DMs choose to not use the in-game one. They use a better one because they like the functionality. I like it just because it's integrated and we don't have to worry about it. The idea is as everyone enrolls initiative, usually with a macro, but you can also go in and set initiative. You can click on a token and add them to initiative right here, and then set their initiative right here. So you don't have to even roll the dice. You can just go through. I have macros and set up over here. You can see my roll init button. That's what adds you to this list and sorts it. And then basically as it goes between players, their job is just to hit next when they're finished. And that notifies the next person if you have the sound on. It even dings and all that. As a DM, you can toggle, say somebody held their move. You can rearrange them, like if someone wants to do their action later, you can change their initiative. Oh, that opened on my other screen. So here's a little window. You can change their initiative. Or you can just set the initiative of certain people if you need to. Sorry, no, make current. That's what I meant to say. Yeah, so you can just say it's them. This also is a really quick way to change someone's states, to say they're exhausted or disabled or something like that. You can also, if you can find them, you can center them. Just so you know where they are for sure. Sometimes when there gets to be a lot of tokens and things get a little hectic, that's a nice feature. Let's see. So the chat window, this is one of the ones that as a player you'll definitely be using, or I would think in most games you would. And the main reason is if you're playing with physical dice, this doesn't come into play as much, but say you're playing with people that are remote, or you just don't like to carry your dice around, you can type /r space d6, for example, and you'll roll a d6. And this little window supports everything that macros do, so you could say, I roll a... And you can do these brackets, and you can say, I roll a d6. And it says I rolled a 6. And if you don't like the way it's displaying it with this here, you can do a T:, and there's a whole bunch on the website. You can go look them up, but this way they turn into mouse overs. There's a whole bunch of stuff I want to show you with the chat window, but that's all I'm going to show you for now, just because I think it'd be easier to cover it just in one video. Next window I have is the global window. And as a player, you probably won't need this one, but as a DM, what I use it for is to store buttons that I might need to use later that I don't want to go in my campaign. Global means that they're stored with with my client. So these, if I open up another campaign file, I actually still have these buttons. Right now, I'm just using them as like a placeholder. You could use a token for that, but basically, like the characters found a holy vodka potion, and if I click on them, I can actually drag it over and drop it in there, and that's what this is from. That way I can just really quickly click through everybody's tokens and drag a spell to them or a button to them. And then I have my macros to do my generic attacks from different things. But so that's that one. The selection window is very important if you're going to use macros at all, because as you see, as I click on them, it shows what macros they have assigned. And all these macros support grouping. Oh, wrong window again. So you can put in a group. So like these things here are not in a group, so they don't have a thing. But if I go down here to class spells, you'll see that they have class spells here. So that's a nice way. This person, as you can see, they have their level 1 spells and scrolls and wands, and I've set up in my framework the ability to be able to make these buttons easier. And so you can do colors and you can roll the dice, and for some of them that require more advanced saves, like here's color spray, it does more advanced stuff. And I'm hoping on the website I'll end up having lots of examples so that everybody can start making fancier stuff like this. It really speeds up gameplay if they don't have to go, oh, what does Magic Missile do again? Or, compared to just clicking it. And we even have hints for this player so they can know what to roll next. But not everybody does that. We have some other guys that just do, here's their attack and here's their damage. And they even made it, it's not even fixed. It just pops up a window and they have what they think their attacks were. But, as you level up, those change. So, whereas the other person, those are based off the character attributes, which I'll get to those in a second. So, there's a lot of ways to use it, but no matter what, the selection window is super important. Impersonate isn't super important for players, because you're basically already impersonated as your player, as your token. But say I wanted to be able to have this big spider talk, I can click on Impersonate Selected, and I can, if I say hello, now I'm talking as the desert spider says hello. So, and then you can click the little X to make that go away. I keep that there just as a reminder to impersonate things, because otherwise I tend to forget. The quick way is to right-click and just say impersonate. You can just jump to the impersonate. That's a lot quicker, but again, it's just having this reminder helps. The campaign window is similar to the selection window, but this is one that goes to all players and allows you to really flesh out, standard things like attacks and saves and all kinds of stuff that the characters might want to be able to do. And I even have like my % chance dice. I gotta click on something. There we go. So the Wind of Fate gives the Desert Spider 44. So the idea is that I have tried to make mine as automated as possible so that you don't have to do as much typing. This way we can really focus on the role playing and the adventure instead of focusing on what the math was, what's the right D20 or what's the right dice to roll for that thing. So that's the basics of the windows. The only other thing I want to cover real quick as well on the interface here is, as a DM, when you're explaining something, you're like, okay, there's a big pit and the spider is going to crawl out of it, stuff like that. It helps a lot to hold the space button and use your mouse pointer, because then it actually draws this little arrow here. And even as players, that's super useful, because they'll be like, I'm going to go stand by this bush. And it helps when there's like 6 bushes and no one has a clue what you're talking about. So it's really good to get into the habit of holding the space bar when you're pointing at things. That way players or the DM or the other players will all know what you're talking about. Really super useful. The other thing that always happens is, like, say this player decides to walk over to this bush, and they would just draw all over here and walk to this bush, and they'd say, oh, it's 50. Well, if you walk across that, you're going to fall in this big hole here. So you have to hit the space bar, and you can do these path points. And that way you can show the DM and the other players the exact path that you walked to get here. And that helps for if you feel like the room might be full of traps, you're worried about the exact path. Or if you're just trying to calculate the distance and you don't want to do little steps. Because the problem is if you imagine how your DM treats it, but if you draw here and draw here and draw here, it might be easier, or based on how your DM likes it, to just do the points. It's kind of comes down to how you like it. We really like using the points to get it more accurate and also just kind of demonstrate, like, I'm going to walk on this ledge, and actually put the dots on the ledge. So those are the basic overall. That gets you started. The problem is there's a lot hidden under the engine that's behind that makes all this work. So I thought I'd go into the properties of a token. So actually I'll do a new token so I'm not messing with that players. This barrel is going to be a token. There we go. So here's a barrel. double click on it, and it comes in with the name of whatever you gave it. And the name is really nice because it is a unique name for the object. So if I copy and paste this, I get barrel 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can see the names below it. So that's nice that they auto increment. What I end up doing is I have a whole bunch of spiders off screen, and then when I want to spawn them, I just copy and paste them in. That way, I think you can even see, like over here's some snakes. They're dead, but that's kind of how it looks. I'll have a whole bunch of objects that I'll just pull in. When you come in here, you have notes, and these are players can see these, DM can see these, and the idea as a token, it's not super useful, but as a DM, I like to put in the weapons they're carrying, the armor they're carrying, maybe some of their damage information and stuff down there, some of the goals of that creature, just to kind of help. The other thing that makes that really useful is I'm going to change this thing to an object, which, as I said before, makes it so this is like a background thing now. It is really just like a barrel in the scenery. Now I'm going to click back on the object layer so that I can edit it, and I'm going to say this is a barrel in the notes, and so these are the player ones can say. So there is the note to the DM, if I could type it. So now, if I go back to the token layer, if I click on it, it pops up in the bottom corner here and says, this is a barrel. And if you're a player, you only see that much. You only see that this is a barrel. If you're DM, you see the rest of it. So this is really useful for, you want to put a trap or a chest, and you want to be able to click on it and have the players know, oh, it's a locked door. That's one of the rules in my campaign is if you come to a door, you have to ask the DM if it's locked, or I have to label it. You can't just barge into rooms, because that way I can arrange the room before you step into it, because I don't always pre-draw my maps. So let me click back on the object layer and change him back to a token, just a regular token. Okay, so I'll click on the properties. The properties tab is used to store information about that token, and this is all designed by the DM based on the framework. So as you can see, I've added a whole bunch of stuff here to keep track of stats and damage and types and abilities and different stuff. And so this is as advanced as you want it to be. The default is pretty basic, but it really just comes down to how your group likes to play and what information they like to track. And then I recommend making a GUI interface to edit this, because editing in here is just not fun. It's really painful to have to edit stuff in here like this. So it works a lot better if you make a GUI. Same thing with the state is that it's based on your campaign file. So I have added a whole bunch here because I've loaded in a bunch of different frameworks and I've tried a bunch of different things. And so I have a whole bunch of states, but the default only comes with a few. And what's nice about these states is you can define that so if I click on dying and I hit OK, you can define how it affects the token visually. So you can have it cross it out or put another icon on top of it. So these are pretty nice, and then you can also quick access them this way, if you don't mind seeing them in this big list here. So that's the states. Speech is kind of a useful thing. I don't use it a lot myself, but some DMs they use it a lot. So you can enter numbers or words over here, and over here you can say their battle cry. And then when you're clicked on that token, you can type /tsay and then that variable name, and they yell it. You can also use this in macros and stuff, or you could have it randomized. So if you want to always have an NPC greet the party, but you don't want it to always be the same, you could just put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then have all the possible greetings that person might say. Or if you just have a huge monologue that they're going to be walking through, and you need to just walk through the monologue, that's another option. Ownership is this tab here, and the idea is that you give each token to a player. That way the reason we do it is that way the token is really owned by that one person, and you don't have to worry about anybody else messing with the token or moving it around or modifying it. Like, it's just nice to have that. It's a campaign property to say strict token ownership. That is really useful, and I recommend it just because that way everyone's not messing with each other's tokens. The config tab, that kind of just is the nature of the thing. Right now, this thing is set to circle as its shape, And the reason I don't like that is because when you do set facing, it just draws this arrow. And that makes sense for a round token like this spider, because as you spin them, they're not going to spin very well. So you have these facing arrows. But in terms of objects that you have, like a table or a chair, knowing how they're facing is really important, and the little facing arrow doesn't really describe it. So if you change it, the square and circle both do that little arrow, but if you do top down, now you can say set facing and it turns the bucket. So if you want the bucket on the ceiling or upside down or whatever, you can spin it around. So I try to leave everything on top down, just because we don't actually care about the facing arrows. We don't try to keep track of which way people are facing, but I much more care about how tables are arranged and that kind of stuff. So I use top down. Size corresponds to the D&D size, so if you want to make a colossal bucket, that is what a colossal bucket looks like. Basically, you just set whatever in-game size they would have, you can just set it. Properties is what appears on the Properties tab. So if I use a different framework, I can go to the Pathfinder framework and I get this crazy looking one that's huge. This framework allows you to do like every possible spell and weapon, and they can change equipment and all kinds of stuff. Mine's a lot more slimmed down than that. Has sight is what you check if they're a player, and with using the fog of war and just the vision distances, when they have sight, you can see how far someone can see. Right now, this map has. Oops, hold on, let me bring that back. There we go. Right now, this has the vision shut off because we're in a big open desert, and so I don't really care how far they can see or what they can see around. But if I decide it was nighttime, you can see how far they can see, and you can actually mouse over them to see how far that person can see. And that's all based on that sight thing. If I zoom out, they can only see out to their edge. Like I said, I only use that down in the dungeons where we're doing a dungeon crawl, and you don't want them to see into the next room or around the next corner, that kind of stuff. Snap to grid is, as a DM, this is kind of where the DM has to make a choice. I like having some monsters who are really agile or they move in a funny pattern. I don't snap them to grid. And because of that, I give my players the option to also not snap to grid. For the most part, everyone likes snapping to a grid, though, because this causes a lot of slowness in the gameplay. As you see, I can move like anywhere I want. So when I have to move 40 feet, the people get really carried away with going to, the exact 40 feet and then trying to figure out where they could move. And it gets really complicated when you're like, well, can this spider hit me, or do I have to be here? Do I have to be here? Where can that kind of stuff just really complicates it. So for a lot of times in battle, we'll stick to the snap to grid. But if we're outside of battle, I don't care if they snap to grid or not. And then every now and then I still do monsters that don't, just because if they're so big and their attack range is so big, that doesn't matter. Visible to players is my trick to keep everything hidden from players. Like these snakes over here are dead, so they're invisible to the players. That's kind of how I keep my trash around. I don't always clean up the map that way. If I want to go back and look at how many snakes they fought, I can just look here, even though that's not visible to players. I think I can even show as player. Yeah, there we go. So I click show as player and you can't see the snakes. So I use that a lot to do the show to player. Visible to owners only is an option I do not use very much. The only time I did was if you have a player who can spawn zombies, or he's carrying a magical sword, or things that might happen all the time. What we'll do is we'll let him carry a copy of that object, like of the zombie, and he'll have to just move it with the party. And if he's going to be summoning a whole bunch, like say you have a wizard who likes to do the summon creature, well, you can do visible to owners only, and then he just makes it visible when it appears. That way he can carry along all his animals or whatever, however he wants to keep track of that. That way you're not always remaking the token, or they can save them off too, but sometimes it's just easier if it's only one or two things, just to keep them visible to that owner only. A lot of times you'll just see ours walking along in the party though anyway, now he's really here. That's kind of how we do it. And then the other thing about this whole interface is you do up here, this is the image of that token, and you can change it if you want to change it to like an ace or whatever. And then here's the placement on the board. If you want the picture to appear in the center, just leave it where it was. Portrait that's when you mouse over it. So you can see the portrait down there in the corner. And then there's handout, which is over here, and that one I don't really use, but if you have players who are hand drawing their animations and they're making really big complicated pictures, then some players like to do a handout. And I'll just walk through real quick making a token. So here's the token tool. You can also get this from RP Tools. And basically you just go out to the internet and you just drag an image into it. And I have the image up in another window so you can't really see it. But so I drag an image in, and then you can resize it, figure out how you want it to look, and then you can pick your border, drag it onto the map. There he is. So there's my dragon. You double click on him and you can see that there's his basic token. Say you wanted to give him a bigger portrait, drag it in there. Then I'm also going to give this one a handout. So you do that, and now when I mouse over him you see the portrait picture. And if I right click I can do show handout now, which shows the bigger picture. And like I said, this is only if you have like a big boss that you just really want to show off how cool they look, or sometimes the players will hand draw pictures and you want to have them in there. So that is the basics. I don't think there was anything else. I'm just going to double check my notes, but no, I think that's about it for this talk. I will try to do more videos and more technical videos, and I'm going to try to keep uploading into my blog all these different buttons and how they all interact together. So hopefully everyone can start seeing how this works, and maybe they'll like it, maybe they won't. But Maptools as it comes out of the box is pretty generic and doesn't have that much flexibility. Well, I mean, it has too much flexibility. There's too many ways to do things. So I've tried to hard code a lot of my buttons so that people don't have to look it up, or they don't have to go research for a while how to do that attack roll or anything like that. They can just hit the button and they don't have to worry about it. So, yep, you can check out more on our website, nerdyfamily.us. I'll also include some links under this video so you can go look up some other guides and stuff like that. So I hope you found this useful, and leave comments if you did. Make sure to give it a +1 and stuff. Alright, well, thanks for watching.